Parents wondered, "Why are you so angry still?" And I thought, because little me never got to be anything but a problem. I didn't say it out loud. Instead, my thumbnail dug into the soft skin of my palm under the dining table, leaving a crescent mark I could focus on so I didn't start yelling or crying or both. The overhead light was too bright, humming in that way cheap fixtures do, turning everyone's faces this washed-out yellow. Dad sat at the head of the table like always, fingers steepled, doing his serious talk eyebrows. Mom had her hands wrapped around a mug of tea she wasn't drinking. My younger brother scrolled on his phone, pretending not to listen, but his shoulders were tense. The air smelled like overcooked broccoli, and the vanilla candle Mom lights whenever she's about to bring up something important. "Can you answer the question?" Dad asked, slow and deliberate, as if I was a student caught talking in class. "Why are you so angry still? After all these years?" My tongue pressed against my teeth so hard it hurt. I watched a little bubble of tea pop on the surface of Mom's mug because that was easier than meeting their eyes. My chest felt tight, that old familiar pressure, like someone had stacked bricks on top of my lungs one by one. I heard myself swallow, loud in the quiet room. "I'm not angry still," I said finally. My voice surprised me. It sounded small and too calm. "I'm angry now." Mom flinched like the word itself was an insult. "But what about?" she asked, leaning forward, eyes wide, her voice already getting that high, wounded pitch. "We did our best. We weren't perfect, sure, but no parents are. You're 30 years old. When are you going to let the past go?" It was a Sunday night, for context. I'm 30, like she said. This family meeting had been scheduled over text like some corporate check-in. "Can you come over on Sunday? Dad and I want to talk." Just to clear the air, red heart. I almost said no. I almost blocked the number and ordered Thai food and binge-watched something instead. But I've been in therapy for a year, and my therapist keeps talking about standing in my truth and giving people the opportunity to rise to meet it. So I went. The thing you need to understand is that I didn't always know I was angry. For most of my life, I thought I was just broken in some vague, unfixable way. Overly sensitive. Too much. Too emotional. Those were the phrases I absorbed like secondhand smoke. When you grow up in a house where your feelings are treated like inconveniences, you start packing them into boxes and shoving them in the attic of your brain. I'm the oldest of 3. My brother, Ethan, is 2 years younger, and our sister Lily is 10 years younger than me. She was the surprise baby that turned Mom from a stressed-out 38-year-old into someone who called herself a boy-plus-girl mom on Facebook like it was a personality. Our house was small, 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, never enough hot water. Dad worked long hours at some job I didn't understand until I was an adult, something with sales and targets and taking one for the team. When he was home, he expected quiet. Mom stayed home until Lily was born, then went back to part-time work at a pharmacy. In theory, I guess this is just regular suburban life. In practice, it felt like living with a very moody dictator and his press secretary. My earliest clear memory of being too much is from when I was 6. I'd made a picture at school, crayon drawing of a house with a sun in the corner, the stereotypical kid masterpiece. The teacher wrote, "Great job, Emma." In red marker at the top, "Yeah, hi, that's me, Emma," and I carried it home like a trophy. Dad was watching TV when I burst into the living room. I remember the blue light flickering on his face, the can of beer sweating on the coffee table. "Daddy, look what I drew," I said, holding it out. He didn't look away from the screen. "Aha," he said. "Later. Please," I asked. "I didn't know yet you weren't supposed to plead." He sighed, dragged his eyes to the paper, gave it a 1-second glance, then shrugged. "It's a house," he said. "You kids all draw the same thing. What's for dinner?" I stood there, picture trembling in my hands, heat crawling up my neck. My stomach felt weird, like I'd swallowed a stone. Mom came in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. She saw my face and frowned. "What?" I shook my head. She took the drawing, plastered on a smile, and stuck it on the fridge. "There," she said. "Happy." I nodded because I was supposed to. I watched the paper flutter slightly every time the fridge opened for the next week. After that, it disappeared, probably thrown out. Clutter, Mom would have called it. That's a tiny thing. I know that. People have been through much worse. But it wasn't just that one moment. It was 1,000 of them, variations on a theme. Me bringing something I was proud of him, dismissing it, her minimizing my reaction. Me being scared, them laughing. Me crying, "Do you want me to give you something to cry about?" By the time I was 10, I'd already learned the safest way to exist was to not take up emotional space. Ethan absorbed the opposite lesson. He could rage, scream, slam doors, throw a controller at the wall, and Dad would call him fiery and a handful, that one, with this tiny note of pride in his voice. When Lily was born, I was 20. I remember watching Mom cradle this red, squirming baby and thinking, "You're going to be everything I wasn't allowed to be." Spoiled, coddled, wanted. In some ways she was. In other ways, honestly, I don't even know yet. She's 19 now and glued to her phone, and I'm only just starting to understand my own damage. I don't have the bandwidth to peel back hers. Anyway, fast forward through years of being the mature one, the built-in babysitter, the emotional trash can. I became the person everyone vented to but no one checked on. If I cried, my mom's first response was, "Are you on your period?" If I got angry, Dad would say, "Watch your tone," in this low, dangerous voice, and my body would go cold. Whenever I tried to bring any of this up, even in the smallest way, the response was some version of what I got on Sunday. "Why are you still angry? Let it go. We're family. People have it worse." The still part is what stings. As if there was a designated acceptable window for anger that I missed, like a limited time sale. The thing that finally pushed me into therapy was a stupid fight about a lamp. I'd gone over to help Mom rearrange the living room. She'd bought this awful floor lamp from a thrift store, and I made a lighthearted joke about how it looked like something from a crime documentary reenactment. She laughed at first, but later, when we disagreed about where to put the couch, she snapped, "You think you know everything, don't you?" A real daughter would be grateful for what she has instead of critiquing everyone. I don't know why that was the straw. That wasn't even close to the worst thing she'd said. But something in me just cracked, quietly, like a plate in the back of a cabinet. I went home and sat in the dark and realized I didn't remember the last time I'd felt safe around my own parents. Therapy gave me words for things I'd only ever felt as vague discomfort. Parentification, emotional neglect, scapegoating. I felt like I was looking at my childhood through clean glasses after years of blur. It was validating and also infuriating. The anger that had been turned inward into self-loathing, anxiety, this constant sense of being fundamentally wrong, started to seep outwards. Not in explosions, but in these sharp little moments where I would think, wait, that wasn't okay. Which brings us to Sunday night. "So, what, you're angry because we weren't perfect?" Dad said, breaking the silence after my "I'm angry now" comment. He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Welcome to the club. No one gets a perfect childhood, Emma. That's life." Ethan's chair creaked as he shifted. He still hadn't looked up from his phone, but I could see the muscle jumping in his jaw. Lily wasn't there. She texted me earlier, "Good luck, LOL," with a crying laughing emoji that made me want to throw my phone. "I'm angry," I said slowly, picking my words like I was walking through broken glass. "Because anytime I try to talk about how things actually were, you act like I'm attacking you. Or like I'm crazy." Mom's eyes filled instantly, like she'd been waiting for her cue. "We are not perfect," she said a little shakily. "We've said that. We've admitted that. But we did our best, didn't we, John?" She turned to Dad for backup and he nodded. "We gave you food, a roof, clothes," he recited. They always hit the same bullet points. "We didn't hit you, we didn't drink away the rent. Compared to what we had growing up, you had it good." The words slid over me like rain on a wax jacket. I've heard some version of that speech since I was old enough to understand the concept of gratitude. "Okay," I said. "You're right. You didn't hit us. You paid the bills. Those things are good. They don't cancel out the other stuff." "What other stuff?" Mom demanded. You keep talking about stuff like we're monsters. Give me one example. One. I laughed. A short, ugly sound. One. I could give her a list. I could print out a spreadsheet. My therapist once suggested actually writing things down when they happened so I could stop gaslighting myself later. I took her advice. My notes app is basically a graveyard of micromemories. Remember when I was 11 and I won that writing contest? I said. Mom blinked. The one in the local paper? Yeah, I said. My heart sped up. It surprised me what came to mind first. Not the big blowouts. They published my story and invited us to a little ceremony at the library. I was so excited. You forgot to come. Both of you. I was the only kid whose parents weren't there. Mom's face twisted. We apologized for that, she said. We were busy. Your sister was a baby. Lily wasn't born yet. I cut in. It was just me and Ethan. You told me life isn't about trophies and that I shouldn't rub it in Ethan's face because he hadn't won anything. Dad shifted. You're remembering it wrong, he said. We couldn't go because… I'm not, I said. I could hear my own pulse in my ears. I remember standing there with this certificate, watching other parents take pictures, and feeling like I'd done something wrong by being happy about it. I went home, and when I tried to talk about it, you told me not to get a big head. Mom shook her head. This is what your therapist is doing, she said under her breath, almost to herself, digging up every little thing we didn't handle perfectly. That's one, I said. My throat hurt. Do you want more? Dad sighed loudly. Emma, you can't live in the past, he said. At some point, you have to move on. You're almost middle-aged, for God's sake. Almost middle-aged. That stung more than it should have. My anger, the thing they were so perplexed by, didn't look like shouting. It looked like my leg bouncing uncontrollably under the table, my nails digging half-moons into my palms, my jaw clenched so tight that later I'd get a headache. It looked like my eyes burning while I tried to keep my voice steady. You're asking me why I'm still angry, I said, forcing myself to look at them. It's because every time I try to talk about how things hurt, you act like I'm ungrateful, like I'm making it up. You apologizing would mean admitting you maybe weren't perfect parents. And you would rather rewrite my memories than sit with that. Mom inhaled sharply. We never claimed to be perfect, she said. We tried. We tried our best. Don't you see that? I thought about little me hiding in the closet with a book while Ethan and Dad screamed at each other in the hallway. About being 12 and rocking a colicky baby Lily to sleep while Mom lay in the dark, exhausted, and Dad worked late, and no one asked if my arms hurt. About standing in the kitchen at 14, heart racing, while Dad yelled 2 inches from my face because I slammed a cabinet too hard, Mom hovering behind him saying, Just say sorry, Emma. Don't make it worse. I see that you did what you knew, I said quietly. I also see that what you knew hurt me. Both can be true. Ethan cleared his throat. It startled me. I'd almost forgotten he was there. He locked his phone, finally, and glanced between us. She's not wrong, he muttered. Mom turned on him so fast her chair squeaked. Excuse me, he shrugged, suddenly fascinated by a crumb on the table. Nothing. Just, you guys did dump a lot on her. Dad's eyes narrowed. Don't start parroting that therapy talk, he warned. We did what we had to. We were a team. No, I said, and the word came out stronger than I felt. You and I were a team. Mom and I were a team. I was a kid and you treated me like a second spouse who didn't get any say. Memories came in flashes. Mom sobbing to me about money when I was 13, asking me not to tell Dad she'd bounced a check. Dad ranting to me about how needy Mom was when I was 15, being 11 and responsible for making sure Ethan had his lunch, his permission slip signed, his laundry somewhat clean, while Dad slept off a late shift and Mom cried quietly in the bathroom. Okay, now you're being dramatic, Mom said, voice tight. We never made you our spouse. That's disgusting. I was your emotional support, I said. When you were stressed, you came to me. When you were mad at each other, you vented to me. You called me your little rock and the only one who understands. I was 10, Mom. She opened her mouth, closed it, then said, "We needed help. You were so mature. You liked helping." I did at the time, because helping was the only way to feel needed, and needed felt like love. My therapist says anger is often a cover for grief. I didn't really get that until recently when I started thinking about what exactly I was angry about. It's not just the moments when they hurt me. It's all the moments I never got to have. Sleepovers I wasn't allowed to go to because Mom needed me home. School trips I skipped because Dad said we couldn't afford it, but then he bought new golf clubs. Times when I wanted to cry and have someone hold me, but instead I swallowed it down because someone else in the house was already crying and there wasn't room for more. That's what flashed through my head when Dad said, "Why are you so angry still?" And I thought, because little me never got to be anything but useful. I didn't say it. Instead, I pushed my chair back. The legs scraped loud against the floor. Ethan flinched. "I don't think this is going anywhere," I said, standing up. My legs felt weird, like they were full of sand. "You asked," I answered. "You don't have to like it, but I'm not going to sit here and convince you my feelings are real." "Sit down," Dad said. He didn't raise his voice, but that tone, the one that had always meant or else, was there. My body reacted before my brain, this instinctual little flinch. I forced myself to keep standing. "No," I said. It was almost a whisper, but it was a no. "I'm going home." Mom's face crumpled. "So that's it?" She said. "We open our home to you, we try to talk, and you just stomp out when you don't get your way?" God, the way she frames things. "I drove here," I said. "You don't open your home to someone you invited to talk. And I'm not stomping out. I'm leaving because this is a lot." I gestured around the table, at the tension hanging in the air like smoke. "And I'm not going to yell, so my option is to go." "You're punishing us," she said, tears spilling now. "You always punish us." There was a time when that would have sliced me open, when her tears would have made me cave instantly, apologizing, backpedaling, offering comfort. I'd done it so many times I could feel the script trying to pull me in even now. "I'm sorry. It's my fault." Forget I said anything. Instead, I took a breath that felt like dragging air through honey and said, "I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting myself." Ethan made a tiny, strangled sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Dad stared at the table like there was something truly fascinating about the wood grain. "Emma," Dad said slowly, "if you walk out now, I don't know when we'll have this chance again. We can talk again when you're ready to hear me without telling me I'm ungrateful or brainwashed," I said. "Until then, we can keep it surface level. Holidays, texts about weather. I can't do this dance where I bleed in front of you and you critique the mess." "That's what your therapist told you to say, isn't it?" Mom said bitterly. I almost laughed. "No," I said. "She told me I get to choose what I allow into my life. That's it." I grabbed my bag from the floor, my keys already in my hand. My heart was pounding so hard my fingers shook. I half expected Dad to stand up, to block the doorway. He didn't. He just sat there, jaw clenched, staring past me. At the front door, I paused. Guilt is a physical thing. Did you know that? For me, it's a heavy hand between my shoulder blades, pushing me back. I almost turned around, almost went back to make sure Mom was okay, to smooth things over, to absorb their discomfort so they didn't have to sit with it. Instead, I opened the door. Cool night air hit my face, sharp and damp. It felt like stepping out of a stuffy room you didn't realize was suffocating you until you left. I made it all the way to my car before I started shaking. Not crying, not yet. Just shaking like I'd run a marathon. My hands fumbled with the keys. I sat there in the driver's seat, engine off, forehead resting on the steering wheel, breathing in the faint smell of old coffee and the vanilla air freshener I'd bought 3 months ago. My phone buzzed. A text from Lily. How bad was it? I stared at it, then typed back, bad. But I didn't scream. I just left. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then nothing. That's her way. Another buzz. Mom, this time, I hope you're happy. You've torn this family apart with your anger. We did nothing but love you. The familiar spike of guilt rose, then plateaued. That was new. I stared at the words and thought about little me again. The kid who would have done anything for a scrap of approval. The teenager who apologized just to stop the tension, even when she didn't know what for. I typed a reply, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. In the end, I sent, I'm not trying to tear anything apart. I'm trying not to tear myself apart anymore. No hearts, no emojis. I put the phone face down on the passenger seat and finally let myself cry. Not the hysterical sobbing I used to do into my pillow as a kid, but this quieter, exhausted crying. Tears tracking down my cheeks while I watched my parents' porch light blur in the rearview mirror. I don't know what happens next. I don't know if they'll ever actually sit with what I've said or if they'll just fold it into their narrative of me as the difficult one. I don't know if I'll get that conversation where my mom says, I'm sorry. I see it now. I could have done better. Maybe that's a fantasy I need to let go of. What I do know is that, for the first time, I didn't shove my anger back down just to make them comfortable. I didn't perform the chill, easygoing daughter role they prefer. I stood there, hands shaking, voice trembling, and I told them the truth as I see it. They asked, why are you so angry still? Like anger is a stain I refuse to wash out. The real answer is, because the kid version of me never got to be anything but accommodating. Because someone has to be angry on her behalf now, or what was the point of surviving it? So yeah, I'm angry. Not all the time. Not at everyone. I laugh with my friends. I love my partner. I eat good food and sometimes I even feel light. But when it comes to them, there is this hot, pulsing knot in my chest that hasn't cooled yet. Maybe it will with time and distance and more therapy. Maybe it won't. I'm writing this here because part of me still wonders if I'm being unfair. If there's some secret rulebook of normal families, where this is all standard and I just missed the memo. I'd really like to know if anyone else has sat at a table while their parents squint at them like a confusing math problem and ask why they're still angry, as if the statute of limitations on hurt has expired. If you have, hi, I see you. I believe little you deserved better, too.